Welcome to another edition of the Radio Coffee House Show, where Jesus meets coffee meets talk radio. And the next one starts right now. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Clint Armitage with the Radio Coffee House Show. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening in. If you're listening in online, you're probably at radiocoffeehouse.com on our radio page. If you're listening on a podcast platform, then you've probably searched Radio Coffee House, all separate words. Make sure you click on the follow, click on the notification button, click all those things so you can get all the newest shows as they come out. And also, you may be listening on our weekly radio show at 93.3 K-Book in Reno Sparks, Washoe County, Nevada. If you are, thanks for coming by. So this show is a little bit different. We're going to be talking about Christian activism, and we're going to talk about the difference between Christian activism and secular activism. We're going to be talking about the basics. So getting back into it, the Christian activism basics will be taught by a lady by the name of Debbie Hudgens. She's been an activist for many, many years. She's a church activist. She's an animal activist. She's a political activist. She's going to give us some insight on how she gets it done, what it means to be an activist, and kind of the basics of it and how we can get involved in a cause or a calling that, that we have passion about. So as we get into it, this is going to be part one of a two-part series. Part one is the basics. And part two, we're going to be getting into talking about The Sound of Freedom, the movie that has sparked another activism about human trafficking, and we'll talk about that as well. So thanks for coming by and stay tuned. Okay, so thanks for coming back and listening to the Radio Coffee House. I'm Clint Armitage again, just like the intro just said. And now today I have in studio an awesome guest that I want to interview regarding being an active Christian, a way to get involved. So the person that I have here in the studio, her name is Debbie Hudgens, and Debbie has been active in the church, active in different arenas as a Christian, and she's been doing it a long time. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to break that down, get some insight from her to see how we can all get active in the things that we care about, whether it be, in the church or outside of the church. We all have something that we are either called to or interested in and may want to get into and be active in. We just don't know how to do it. And so that's why I brought Debbie in to talk to her about this, because she has so much experience. So Debbie, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate you coming in the studio and talking to us.
Sure. Thanks, Clint. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, I do want to ask you some questions about, how long you've been, an activist. I also want to know, what's the difference between a Christian activist and a regular activist, like a secular activist? And then I also want to break down some of the steps on how someone can get started in being active, whether it's in their church or secular or whatever, because I think we all kind of need to know some of these things if you're not involved or you've never been exposed to how to get involved, but you kind of want to, or being led to or called to. We need to have some tangible ways to be able to do this. So that's why I'm calling on you, because I believe you are very good at this. And so let's start off with this. Let's start off with what activism means to you.
Activism it's non-confrontational and being able to even love the other side of your argument or the thing you're passionate about. It's loving like Jesus loves and being passionate about an issue that God has laid on your heart that you want to pursue and do something about. You want to be out in the community, helping people be aware and getting people involved that maybe just don't know how to get started.
Okay. So how long have you been active, whether it be, ministries or just being quote unquote, an activist, a Christian activist? Because that's kind of what the definition you just gave was, more along the lines of being a Christian activist, which is what we want to break down here.
I've always been a passionate animal lover. So I was probably an activist for foster animals and that kind of thing long before I started working on other issues, but raising awareness about, even just how many dogs are in a shelter or cats are in a shelter, and helping people understand that is a form of activism. activism. And I would say probably 10, 12 years maybe doing that kind of work. It can be very rewarding. It can be very frustrating when you see a problem that you don't feel like is being solved or that you're not making any difference. But everything works in God's time. We sometimes have to wait for Him. We do what we can and let Him do the rest.
Okay. And actually, I like that you brought that up, the fact that we have to wait on God, because that's where I think there's a difference. And you can clarify or you can, disagree. It's up to you. Where when you think about a secular activist and confrontations, because that's part of activism, right, is confronting problems that you see and want changed, and maybe no one's addressing it like you were talking about. But on the secular level, that may be just the person's, passion and all that. But if we're talking about being a Christian activist, we also have to be ready to hear what the Lord has to say about it. And maybe He doesn't want us to be active in a certain area that we kind of think we want to be involved in. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. You should always have God's leading in what you want to work on and what you want Him to help you with. And He confirms things to you when you do start working on something. You're never going to be violent with anybody or get in somebody's face and tell them how wrong they are, because everybody has a position. If it's something someone else is very passionate about, you have to be careful. You don't want things to turn into a riot, pushing match. So, and that stuff can happen because people do have their very firm beliefs sometimes in things that you maybe are trying to bring an awareness to the other side. But there's a lot of things that we can all agree on. Some of the things that people get passionate about is jail ministry, feeding the homeless, child trafficking, and we recently saw the movie Sound of Freedom, and that movie is causing a movement and bringing awareness to a worldwide problem. And I can't think of anybody that would say that's not a worthy cause. They may not be passionate about it, but maybe they want to donate money. Maybe they want to call their local or state government to see what's being done about it, or get involved in events and doing other things to raise money.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit, and I want to break this down so that we can kind of give our listeners step by step in this process of trying to get active, whether it be a church ministry or whatever it is. I want to talk about some steps. Now, you'd mentioned jail ministry, also homeless ministry, and then finally the human trafficking problem that is being raised right now as we speak because of that movie Sound of Freedom. So we'll break down the Sound of Freedom because we both saw it, and so we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But so I want to back up a little bit though, and I want to talk about some of these issues. Like you had mentioned that people can get passionate about their cause or the way they believe things should be, and that's part of activism, right? Activating some things to make change. And so what I want to do is I want to ask a couple questions about that. So first, is it difficult to differentiate between what God's calling you to be active about and maybe you bringing in your own passion and doing that?
That's a really good point and question, because if we feel there's something we're interested in, we need to pray about it and let God give us direction on that. Ask for confirmation that this is something that He wants you to work on. And He can do that in a lot of ways and unexpectedly put something in your path that you didn't really think of before. So I would just seek Him out. I would read and study about the issue and pray and ask God to show you. There's a lot of issues in our community and in our schools that people are passionate about and that we might want to raise awareness to, and we need to just approach all of that with love. We don't need to get in anybody's face about it. We just need to say why we think this might or might not be a good thing and what alternatives could be done in the school, whatever it is that would be better for the kids, the families, whatever. Because basically what we're trying to do is promote Christian values and family values. We want to keep the families together and promote a healthy growth for the families and kids.
Okay. So thanks for that. And I appreciate that you mentioned that the family values, the Christian values is what you're really trying to promote. That's the bottom line of everything. No matter what you're passionate about, it's still what I think, and again, you can disagree or agree with this. Do you think that one of the goals in quote unquote confronting people, being active, is kind of a fundamental job for a Christian is to draw people to Christ in everything that they do? So again, when you're coming up with a very heated subject, right? I mean, we could see it all over the news. We could see it out in our communities. I mean, we have major conflicts happening, major divides, and it doesn't appear people are actually talking. And if they're Christians, then are they actually drawing people to Christ? Do you think that's one of the things that we should be doing, even though we're, confronting a problem that we see?
Absolutely. One of the biggest questions sometimes, if you see somebody doing something that you think really is not a good idea, or they're promoting something that's against what you feel like as a Christian, ask them why. Why do you think this is a good idea? Why don't we look at it this, or maybe this is a better way? There's so many issues in our communities today and we need people. We need people that get involved on every kind of level. And I would just ask people to examine their neighborhood. It could be anything. I see a lady on Pyramid Highway picking up trash every day, every single day. That's her ministry, because she wants to keep God's world beautiful. And I admire her. She literally makes a difference in everybody's life. Whether you know it or not, Pyramid Highway is clean because of this woman. And there's a lot of ways we can make differences in our world. And it can be a phone call, it can be writing a check and donating money. It can be holding a meeting in your neighborhood, talking about it with your neighbors. There's a lot of different ways to promote, those issues and solutions. Maybe get some ideas from other people, what they think the solution is.
That's good points. You have multiple points that I kind of want to speak on here. The first one is because people are different in their personalities, in their calling, in just what they feel they should be getting into. You brought up the point about the lady cleaning up the road there on Pyramid there, and that just shows you can be active without actually being confrontational, knowing that something needs to be changed and actually getting involved. I mean, isn't that kind of the basis of it all, the foundation of just getting involved some way to change things for the better? And if anybody were to talk to that lady, she would have the opportunity, because if they ask, why are you doing this? She would actually have the opportunity to glorify God in what she's doing without being confrontational at all. So being active or being an activist doesn't necessarily mean you have to, because that's kind of what you picture, right? Because you see stuff on TV, you see the riots happening, you see all these violent confrontations going on in the media and also just in the community, and you're like, I don't want to be involved in that, that's dangerous. So that point of getting active in ways that you think would help glorify God, and then also being able to explain to people why you're doing what you're doing in a non-confrontational way. So it is possible, like you just said. So I really like that you brought that example up, because it really does give a good picture of being active without actually being confrontational.
She could be chasing people down on the highway that are throwing trash out. That's not what she's doing. She's just going and picking it up. That's right. So yeah, there are ways to get involved and be very peaceful about it.
Because then that does put you in a place where you're drawing people to Christ, rather than, with this whole division thing of, hey, we're on this side of the line, you're on that side of the line, and don't cross our side, we won't cross your side kind of thing. It doesn't seem to be Christian, because our job is to draw people to Christ. Well, if we're drawing lines in the sand, and I can understand you draw a line for a specific reason where you believe, hey, this is evil even. But ultimately, we have to draw them to Christ somehow, because otherwise, how's that going to change?
Right.
Where's the change going to come from?
You don't want to put them on the defensive to defend their position. So that's another thing. And that's why you approach it with a question. And why do you think this is a great idea? Why is it not a great idea? What should we be doing about this issue? And so think there's a lot of ways to draw people in, and just always be loving and Christ-like with people.
Right. I think that's what we need to really put at the forefront, because yes, God cares about the issues. He cares about you being active in the issues, but he also cares about the other person. And we have to separate, just like God separates the sin from the sinner, we have to separate it as well. I know it's a little bit tougher for us to do that. Have you been in situations where, or can you give me examples where your steps of confronting someone but in a loving way actually worked and it kind of helped change their mind, or at least got them to understand your position a little bit better?
Sometimes speaking in front of our county and local council people, it seems to plant seeds with them on whatever issue it is. And I don't think we should ever stop talking to them and letting them know how we feel. I think it's more gradual sometimes than immediate. They might have to walk away and think about it, but you've planted the seed for them to consider something else. Even like a homeless person, if you were to stop and talk with them, and I've heard a lot of times it's not a good idea to, give them money and that kind of thing. But maybe if you just talk to them and ask them, why are you here? What happened? Maybe that would help, maybe they'd start talking to you. Maybe you could give them some resources to get checked into. Reno has a lot of resources. Washoe County has a lot of resources for people that can help. We're trying to compile a list right now of everything that is available, and there's quite a bit.
And so I really agree with a couple of things that you said there. You said it may be a process, like planting the seed, right? But that's biblical also. The Bible tells us that when we're talking about even the gospel, one will plant the seed, one will water, but the Lord actually sprouts the growth. And so that's actually a biblical process. So we can never really, on a personal level, change people's views or minds, really. What we're trying to do is allow the Lord, the Holy Spirit, to go in and change minds. Because that's what metanoia is. It's a fundamental change of thinking. Metanoia, a Greek word. And so if that's really what we're trying to do, then planting seeds is okay. Actually, and when you talked about going up to a homeless person and just asking them questions, if you truly care about the person, then you won't need to really change their mind. You're really just caring about the person. So asking them questions, how are you doing? What's going on? Do you want to talk? Hey, you want to go get a bite to eat? Or, bringing food with you or whatever. And I know I've had personal experience doing that kind of thing. And it's amazing because at first, I remember one time I was at a park and there was a lot of homeless there. And the Lord told me, I want you to talk to this homeless person. And I said, no, but I kept on walking. I was walking around the park. And then, so I saw him one time. And so I walked again. The Lord told me to talk to him. I said, nope. I kept on walking. Came around again. There he was again. The Lord said, speak to him. I said, nope. And I walked around again. I think I walked that park about 6 or 7 times. And finally, I said, okay, Lord, I'm sorry. I'll go and talk to him. Because I didn't know. I thought maybe, this is going to be confrontational or this is going to be bad or something. And I just did not. Plus, it's uncomfortable. And I did not know what the end result was going to be. But I finally trusted the Lord, even though it took me a little while. I finally trusted him. And I sat down and I spoke with the man. And I said, hey, are you hungry? And I go, do you mind if I go get you something to eat? What would you like to eat? And he said, pizza would be nice. And I said, all right, you know what? Let me go get some pizza and I'll buy it and come back. And then a friend of his came too. And I ordered pizza for them and myself and brought it back. And we had a great conversation. His friend left pretty quick. I think he just wanted pizza, which is totally fine. But I was able to talk to this man for about an hour and a half while we ate and spoke. And he told me all about himself and his life and the stuff he was going through. And then he told me this, which is where I knew the Lord was in this whole thing. And it just took me to take one step of faith. And he told me, he goes, you know what? I was giving up on God until you are now here talking to me about him. And now I feel rejuvenated in the Lord. And because he felt a little bit abandoned by the Lord because he thought the Lord wasn't answering his prayers, wasn't speaking to him, didn't care about him. But just because I told him, because I told him the truth, I go, look, I was supposed to talk to you like 6 different times ago as I was walking around the park for so long. But then I didn't, because the Lord told me to speak to you. And I didn't do it until this, the final time. But he acknowledged that and he took that as the Lord caring about him. So really, if we do stuff like that, we're just planting seeds. We're just watering. And the Lord's going to do the change. The Lord's going to, give them the metanoia to lead him and draw him closer to himself.
We're the hands and feet of Jesus. Yeah, we have to. So we're commissioned to do that.
That's a great way. And again, non-confrontational, although I was trying to talk myself out of it because I was thinking, well, this might get a little, because I didn't know the outcome of it, fear of the unknown. But we really just have to trust God, again, like you said, follow our leading, because he's going to put that passion in there too. He's going to help us find that direction that he wants us to go, like the Lord did with me at the park with this guy here. And then we just have to take that step of faith, not having to worry about the outcome. And I think that's where activists can kind of get caught up, especially secular, right? Can get caught up into, hey, I'm so passionate about making this change that it doesn't matter what it takes. The ends justify the means. And I can get violent, I can get confrontational, I can even cheat sometimes to do what they believe is the right thing, but doing it in a way that is wrong.
That's right. Yeah. You have to present your Christian values, otherwise you're not leading by example. So you want to make sure that you're not getting involved in something that someone's going to point a finger at and like, these people do this, So there's just, there's so many different avenues and ways to, and issues that we have in our community that need attention and that we can get involved in. Everybody can't do child trafficking. Everybody can't do jail ministry or feeding the homeless, but we can all do something.
Those are very wise words from Debbie. We can all do something. So again, thank you for coming by. This is part 1 of a 2-part series called Christian Activism with Debbie. So make sure you come by for part 2 as we get into some real activism. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Radio Coffee House Show, where we're all about Jesus, coffee, and radio. We'll see you next time.